Welcome back, YouTube. Such a great Saturday. Thanks for coming back. Today we're going to talk about HackTheBox's newest retirement, OpenKeyS. OpenKeyS was a unique box with some strange exploits, to be frank. It's not hard at all. It sits in the medium realm just because there were some CTF issues where you had to find certain things, and in a couple cases you had to kind of customize what you were doing and understand what the exploit was that you were going after. But for the most part, there's two CVEs. If you take a look at this image, this one right here, it's the radar map. So in HackTheBox, they'll put up a radar map of kind of the different techniques you're gonna have to employ on a box. And right away, this one was tipped off to be CTF and CVE. So there's a couple spots where you might have gotten stuck, and just understanding that radar map, go look for that CVE. And so that's what we're gonna show, that's what we did. For the most part, there's gonna be a little bit of enumeration, get into those CVEs, and it's really only gonna take 3 tools. I mean, you can get into the nitnoid of Nano and some Bash, but for the most part, it's gonna be a browser, a fuzzer, and a proxy. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so as always, NMap. We'll do 10.10.10.199 as today's box. We'll go ahead and let that run. Should come back fairly quick. There's really only 2 ports that are visible on this box to us, and that's going to be port 22 and port 80. So there it came back, and with port 80 we can go and specify the port and then just do scripts and versions, SCSV. I'll let that run just to see if we can get some additional information from the server in terms of what type of software it might be running, what kind of banners we're going to find. So we do see it's OpenBSD HTTPD. So it's running on an OpenBSD native daemon for HTTP. And you can kind of allude to that just from looking at what was on the machines page for HackTheBox. It does say it's OpenBSD. A little bit strange. That's an odd one. We don't come across it too often, so keep that in mind. When you look at the HTTP title, the site doesn't have a title, so there's no information to gather there. Let's go ahead and start up our proxy, and we'll get our browser running. So we will go 10.10.10.199. And you immediately see it's OpenKeyS, and it says retrieve your SSH keys. So that's kind of interesting. This system is going to retrieve your SSH keys, which should be what we need to maybe SSH into the box. I'm not really sure. So let's try admin. Okay, authentication denied. Admin. And then maybe try some SQL. I know that was something that worked last week. No, nothing doing. Let's take a look at the page source. So it does say authentication denied, username, password. Not a lot of information to go off of. So this is a great jumping off point to try and do some Gobuster. So I'll do a Gobuster, dir, give it the URL, HTTP 10.10.10.199. And then we'll give a word list, and I like to use my opt. I've got seclist, discovery, web content, and then I'll use Raft. I used to use Burpsuite's native ones, but after a while, some folks started getting smart about that on HackTheBox, that you kind of had to go for something that was a little bit wider aperture, and that's what you got from Raft large words. I like to run about a 150, and then I'll do a timeout of 45 seconds, just in case there's any issues with my connection. And I just want to look for directories right now, so we'll go ahead and say yeah. So right away, images, CSS, JS, fonts, vendor, those are pretty standard. But then there's this other directory called includes. So let's see if we can get anything off of that. So when you go to includes, it allows for file directory browsing. So tells us that there's 2 files in this folder. One's called auth.php, one's auth.php swap. So if we click on auth.php, it's doing something. There's 2 lines in here. We're just not sure maybe what the parameters are, what we got to feed it. So let's go ahead and go back, take a look at the swap file. This is a very unique swap file because it gives us quite a bit of information. So if you're paying attention, it looks like Vim. There's a name here, Jennifer. There's another name here, which is OpenKeyS.htb. So it gets us a host name. And then it kind of goes into var www htdocs includes auth.php. So that now tells us, hey, here's the file structure of where this is at. And then there's some PHP code. There's some gibberish here. I'm not really sure what that is. But then there's PHP code. Session start, session destroy. And it goes in and it's looking for session. So these are some of the parameters it's going to be looking for, which is username. And that's going to be something that's in the request. User agent, obviously that usually comes with what you're putting in. Remote address, there's a request time for your session's last activity, maybe login time. There's a little code here for has the session expired, so it'll look to see if it's logged in. Is the user logged in? Session start the session. And if you come all the way down here, that there's a system call. So the system is a command, and then get the return code back, obviously, and then here it says return code. So the system command is running $command, which is escape shell command, and then running .. so it takes it back out of includes. There's a folder called auth helpers, a file called checkauth, and then that checkauth is going to take, so that's a space, and then username space password. So its function is really just to check your authorization. So give it a username, give it a password, and then it's going to authenticate. Okay. So my next step here is to look for this file. So if we just go back to one directory and then do a call for, it'll be a call for auth_helpers. And that also has directory listing. So check auth. And then it allows you to download that. So let's go ahead and save that file. We'll take a look at that. And then just go back here. That's all you see. You can go through and you can do file enumeration, but we've kind of found the entry point as far as I can tell. So let's go and cat. We'll start with file, downloads, check auth, and you're gonna see it's an ELF 64-bit LSB shared object. It's running user libx exec ld.so for OpenBSD. So it gives you a little bit of information. If you say chmod add execution to downloads checkauth and then run downloads checkauth, it doesn't seem to want to work here. All right, what if we do strings? All right, so let's scroll up here and take a look at what we're getting here. So like I said, libexec ld.so, it is running OpenBSD at exit auth user okay. That's interesting. Some linkers. There's kind of a certificate begin. There's a test in here, certificate end. So there's a few different functions within this, and then again you've got auth user okay. So let's take a look and see what we can find about that. So auth_user okay. And if you look it up, it's going to fall under a function in the authenticate for OpenBSD. So it's just going to say name, style, type, password. It returns a simple yes or no response. just 0 implies failure, non-zero implies success. This is going to make a call, and it's a local file making a call. So we're remotely accessing this file, and this file will do auth user OK to determine if the username and password matches. Okay. That's good. I like that. I tried to break it down in IDA Pro. Just not worthwhile. You really can't gain any more information than what you do from strings. So we know that this is doing that user check. We know, didn't really talk about it, but if we come back, all right, we go back to the swap file. That's where it's really going to be at. So we'll go 10, 10, 10, 199, and that was in includes. You go to swap file. Escape shell command was another thing that I took a look at. So maybe there was a way to do some command injection if you put in a username, colon, break out of it and try and, or semicolon, break out of it and try and run your own command. But escape shell command is there to sanitize user input. So just to let you know, command injection wasn't going to work here, but it looked like a good opening, which would have been pretty cool. So that's not it. But we've determined kind of what it's doing. It's doing the authentication. We got a username, Jennifer. We got OpenKeyS HTTP. So let's go ahead and put that into our host file just in case. So sudo nano etc hosts. Come down here, 10, 10, 10, 199. And that one is going to be OpenKeyS.htb. All right. If we come back here and type HTTP OpenKeyS.htb, it works. So it gets us back here. Let's take a look at what we're getting in Burpsuite. So Burpsuite's going to be taking all of our history here. So we said get here, came back, and this is where you get that information about OpenBSD HTTPD, and it's telling you to pull down index.html or index.php. So here you pull down index.php, and then it calls for a set cookie. So it's going to set your PHP session ID. So we established that. But this is kind of where you get stuck. I mean, we've looked at the swap file. We know that there's a bunch of variables. We know that it's doing authentication. What can we find out if we just do some research? So OpenBSD authentication exploit. The reason I say this is because we looked at that radar map. See it again right here. The radar map says CVE. We can't find a loophole. We can't find a way in. So let's see what's out there. And there were a slew of them here on 4, 5, 6 December 2019. So that's kind of an interesting thing to take a look at. Several of the blogs go into it, but this one, being the number one, we'll go ahead and click this one. And it's going to talk about 4 CVEs. So 4 CVEs came out at the same time in December of 2019. And there's 3 that are local privilege escalation and 1 that's authentication bypass. So let's take a look at 19521. 2221. Here we go. Remotely exploitable authentication bypass vulnerability. It resides in OpenBSD's authentication framework, which is that man page that we pulled up earlier. The user auth OK is a part of the authentication framework. It said it can be exploited by various services like SMTP, LDAP, Radius, SUE, or SSHD. So there's several ways that you use the authentication framework. And in this case, we're using that application which calls to auth user OK. And then it just goes into explain that you're going to have a login, a challenge, and a response. And there's password, S key, U key. But usually it would call the login style, and then you'd have username class. But there was an opportunity here where if you specify a username in the form of an option, it would treat it like an option. So username's over here, but before that you would enter this information in. So what attackers determined was if you say the username is -s challenge, it forced a password style authentication versus other, and it would go straight to that. You see it in LDAP, you see it in SMTP, and it's just username S challenge, password is whatever. And it works. So let's see what we can find if we go back to this page and we just say attack S challenge password. Okay, we made it through the login. We bypassed the login, but we got a weird message here. Open SSH key not found for user S challenge. All right, well, if we go back to the login page, you can try Jennifer S challenge maybe, and then password. But what you saw in that information is the username would go in front of the option type. Okay, let's try S challenge Jennifer. Well, now it's looking for what's username is S challenge Jennifer. So it hasn't been able to split them up yet. But if you were to put Jennifer in the password field, it'll treat it like a password. So there's a little bit of an oddity here, but it is bypassing the authentication. What we need to do is figure out a way to give it a username. So let's take a look at Burp. So in Burp, here's where we would post it. And when we posted just, S challenge Jennifer worked because they all got through. It actually gave a 302 found, and it would redirect to SSH Key.php. So that's how we knew it was working. Okay, so it would redirect to SSH Key, which is this file right here. And then it would turn around and say, I don't know this user. But if you look in the get, there's no user. All that information was passed from the other one. Let's see if we take this to repeater. What happens if we say get username equals Jennifer? We send, it's going to say access denied. And it's actually kicking you back to index.php because you can't put a username in here. It had to come from the previous message. Well, if it came from the previous message, that was this post file, you posted to the index with the information. Let's take this one. So if we send this to repeater, and what happens if we say and username equals Jennifer? So we give it username S challenge, username Jennifer, password, password. It's going to come in here and say 200, and your authentication was denied because now it's trying to check both usernames. That's not going to work. Let's go ahead and delete this. I'm going to cut this out, and let's try and put it into a different field. So let's put it into host. All right, so it did authenticate this successfully, and it's sending me a SSH key sshkey.php. We'll follow this, and it still says I can't find this user. All right, let's go back. Let's cut this out. You can try it in every field, but the real obvious one here is cookie, because cookie can take so many different parameters and it'll just keep stacking. Let's go ahead and try and paste it into cookie. So here you can see it recognizes username equals Jennifer. So what if it just looks for username and it'll pull that after it's already done the authentication? And that's where you get the redirect. We'll follow the redirect. And then down here you see what looks like the open SSH key for user Jennifer. One of the ways you can access it is just say show response in browser, copy this, come back over here, paste it in. Another way you can get to it is by going into your cookie manager, manage all your cookies. You say open key, you can add in another key here and just say there's a cookie for username equals Jennifer. I prefer Burpsuite just because it allows you to really track what you're doing, and then repeater because it allows you to modify your updates as you go. All right, so here we've got a key. Let's go ahead and copy this. We'll go back over here, clean this up. Let us go to our files. So make dir OpenKeyS. We'll go into OpenKeyS and then we'll nano ID. Let's call it Jennifer _ ID. Just paste that in there. And then with every key that you do this, we're going to try and use it for SSH access. So we need to chmod it to 600 to just restrict it to us using it. And we'll do it to Jennifer ID. So if I do SSH Jennifer at OpenKeyS.htb, we need to specify tag I that we're going to be using an ID RSA key. So we're going to say Jennifer ID. And we're in the box. So if I say ID, we are user Jennifer. Now some of the information you're going to see at the top, OpenBSD 6.6 is just kind of giving that information. If you come back over here to some of the authentication bypass issues, it's going to tell you possibly up here, but it will definitely tell you back in the other documentation from Qualys and some of the other stuff that it is a 6.6 vulnerability, so that is still this box. All right, where are we at? We're in home Jennifer. We do an ls cat user.txt. We got user done. That's pretty, I make it look pretty easy, but with this one you really had to kind of know that you were looking for those different little bugs, those different little oddities. Definitely doing HTTP enumeration helps, so being able to dig in there with a fuzzer. We kept it pretty top level. They gave us directory listings, which was an easy kill. But with that, we're at user. We need to figure out how we're going to get to root. Honestly, if you come back over here, they've given you 3 local privilege escalations. So let's take a look at them. This one is via sue. So if you have the ability to sue, but we don't know the password, so I'm not going to get into that. This one does it through xlock. We're not going to worry about that. Okay, there's a third one which uses SKey and YubiKey. To be honest, this was the one I went after because it was OpenKeyS, and especially if you look at this picture right here, the S is capitalized, and I think that was just a reference to saying it's not just one key. If you look at the picture, there's 2 keys. I mean, there's several references to not just the SSH key possibly, but maybe another key that you found. So this one talks about the POC, just goes in here, it makes an SKey password, and then it kicks you right into the root. So let's see what we can find if we look for this right here. All right. So bcols has a couple of local exploits that I found to be pretty handy. He scripted all this out, one of the first ones on that page, and we are looking for, he kind of grouped them together, so 2019-19 520. If you come down here, it'll say the same thing. It's 520 and 522 from the Qualys POCs, and it goes through and explains how in a non-default configuration you're going to be able to use SKey YubiKey. So let's take a look at his exploit. And it's in GCC, just being able to exploit. It is a bin sh. So really the only thing that you need to know is that GCC is functioning, or CC actually. In this case it's CC compiler. So let's go to raw. we'll copy this, and we're sitting here, so let's say which CC, and it does have CC, cool. This one kind of annoyed me, just because it's my normal standard. Take me to dev SHM. There is no dev SHM. So we'll just go cd temp, and then we'll nano exploit .sh. Nano works. Got our SSH terminal access, so we have a little bit better capabilities, so we'll just paste this in here. And I am not going to change a thing. This is the problem. This one is so easy if you know what you're looking for, because there's no modification required. So we'll go ahead and exit out of this. We're going to save it, and then we're going to save it into exploit.sh. We'll just do a chmod plus x for exploit.sh, and then run exploit.sh. It's going to come through here. It's going to check the system. It's going to make an SSH Key authentication because it knows it can. It says it's going to delete all keys. You have 5 seconds to cancel. This box you do just have to kind of kill it. So it's trying 522, which is the S key. Also why you probably saw a capital S in OpenKeyS. And it says your password is this, and then it says give me the S key password. So you really just come in here, copy, paste, hit enter. And sure enough, your root. The frustration with this one is it is that simple. So if we go to cd root, cat root.txt, there's your root. Start to finish with intro, this is 25 minutes. This is a super easy box. It's just knowing what to look for. This is week 2 for Polar Bear and Give Paradox back to back with a retired box. I liked that it taught you new things. I didn't like that it was CVE CVE back to back. So if you didn't appreciate it, you know, give them some comments, but for the most part, it was a unique exploit being OpenBSD and not seeing it that often. Getting into trying to figure out how to get the Jennifer username in there was probably the hardest thing when I was trying to tackle this box. But you get in there, you do enumeration to HTTP, you run that auth bypass on 21, but then, as I said, you kind of have to find a parameter injection point in order to go not just auth bypass, but to take advantage of the running code to check the username and password to allow you to get that SSH key to kick out. Once you get the SSH key, pretty simple, run 19522 local privesc and you're in and out. So I appreciate y'all for listening to this, coming back every Saturday. Please subscribe if you enjoy these boxes, comment if you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the bottom. Coming up, I'm going to be attacking a giveaway. So this is kind of new for me. I'm going to be giving away 2 Humble Bundle kits, and it's going to be the Hacker 101. And then I hope we'll be able to get people on Twitter, Facebook. I do have LinkedIn, and then obviously right here at YouTube. So stay tuned for that. I'll be putting the information out soon. But for right now, go ahead and have a great week, and hopefully we'll see you guys soon.